And I remember when I was in school, one of my teachers said to me, Azrina, this is a science college, not an English college. You know, I suppose maybe I was too active or something like that, I don't know.
Join me, Ansara Karim, on Us at the Process as I talk about creativity, the process of creating, and everything in between. This is a special edition of Us at the Process just for MRSM students. In this video, I will talk about the skills that you would need or the skills that you can develop from now if you want to become a journalist. So sit back and relax because this is going to be a long video. Okay, I'm kidding. But I hope you'll bear with me as I talk about my eclectic career path, where I went from architecture and design to journalism and publishing, with a brief stint in media and communications, before arriving at my current position. In 2019, I set up a creative development program called Trust the Process, based in a cozy double-story terrace in Klanajaya. Before I get into all that, allow me to introduce myself.
Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera kepada pelajar-pelajar MRSM, tenaga pengajar, guru-guru dan juga wakil Ansara yang sudi menjemput saya untuk berkongsi pengalaman saya di dalam bidang kewartawanan. Izinkan saya perkenalkan diri saya dahulu. Nama saya Azrina binti Abdul Karim. Saya merupakan bekas pelajar MRSM Terendak dan saya berada di sana selama 5 tahun, dari tahun 1986 hinggalah 1990. Jadi saya ambil SPM tahun 1990. Selepas tamat SPM, saya ditawarkan untuk mengikuti kursus A-Levels mula-mula di MRSM Kuala Lumpur, dan kemudian tahun yang kedua di MRSM Banting, yang juga dikenali sekarang sebagai College Mara Banting. Selepas itu saya mengikuti pengajian di NCUK Shah Alam Seksyen 6, program berkembar, twinning program dengan beberapa universiti di United Kingdom, dan kemudian meneruskan pengajian di Birmingham School of Architecture. Jadi selepas balik daripada United Kingdom, saya bekerja beberapa tahun sebelum saya menyambung pengajian dalam bidang architectural, dalam subjek architectural history di Bartlett School of Architecture di London. So macam mana daripada architecture dapat masuk ke journalism? Okay, let me explain.
When I was 25, I got a part-time job as a sub-editor at the Sun newspaper. One of the senior sub-editors asked me, "Do you know what a journalist is?" And I, being young and clueless, after all I did not study journalism at university, assumed that a journalist is just another term for a reporter. And he said, "Do you know that you're a journalist?" I was like, "Me?" Thinking that I just edit stuff. So from my almost 20 years of experience in journalism and publishing, this is what I understand the journalist to be. The journalist is someone who gathers information about current or topical issues that are based on facts and verifiable opinion, which will then be presented to the public in various forms, whether it's in print, broadcast, or online. The journalist does not write fiction. Whatever he or she presents or says or writes can be traced to a particular source. So what's important in journalism is truth and verification. Stephen Gunn, the co-founder of Malaysia Kini, said, "There are few human undertakings which demand a fiercer commitment to truth as journalism." Datuk Kadir Jassin, veteran journalist, said, "A good journalist does not take chances with his or her sources of information. Confirm, 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 as well as check, check, check."
There are two pathways that I know of to become a journalist. One is you have to study journalism or media and communications at university level, and the other one is that you can study any course at university, but then when you're hired to become a rookie news reporter or writer, you will be trained on the job. So the training is quite intensive, and you will have to shadow a senior reporter. You will have to learn how to do interviews, how to do research, how to source for stories, how to look for stories, how to come up with stories and ideas.
Two veteran journalists I respect took different paths to get to journalism. Datuk Khadir Jassin started his journalistic career as a journalist with Bernama, the National News Agency, in 1969, and in 1971 he won a Colombo Plan scholarship to study journalism in New Zealand. And later on he became the group editor-in-chief of the New Straits Times Press. Rahman Rashid, however, studied marine biology at University College Swansea in Wales, but he became a journalist in 1981 after working with the Fisheries Department in Penang and University Putra, Malaysia. He was a writer and columnist at the New Straits Times before joining Asia Week in Hong Kong. Rahman Rashid was awarded a Malaysian Press Institute Journalist of the Year award in 1985. So it's possible to become a journalist even if you don't have a journalism degree, but you will be trained on the job. And in fact, if you go to a lot of newsrooms, you will find that more than a few of the reporters and editors actually have other degrees apart from journalism. Some of them did law, some did accountancy, business, even engineering. But if you're willing to to be trained, then anything is possible. Whether you graduate from journalism school or not, when you work as a reporter, you need to follow a code of ethics. This will protect you in case you are wrongfully sued, and also this helps you to know your limitations and your rights. You can read this at the Malaysian Press Institute website. You also need to know to understand the relevant acts such as Akta Fitnah 1957, Akta Hak Cipta, Kanun Kesiksaan, Akta Keselamatan Dalam Negeri, among others. So you've got to be knowledgeable about this and always be on your toes. And of course, your notebook and your recording of your interviews are important. So you should keep them for about 7 years, just in case you need them as evidence.
There is this basic skill that you must have, okay, where if you want to be either an architect or a journalist. One is, if you want to be an architect, you need to have you need to know how to draw. If you want to be a journalist, you need to know how to write. Why do I say that? Because kalau macam you hilang smartphone atau laptop, if you lose your laptop or your smartphone, there's no electricity, you can still write. If you have a pen or pencil and a piece of paper, you can still draw, you can still write. So that means you can still get your information and you can still convey your ideas. Okay, so basically I can draw and I can write. So in a way, I don't know whether that's a good thing, but it has also led me on this very eclectic path in my career. My working experience in journalism and publishing is more than my working experience in architecture. Although I did manage to get to a point where I was able to teach architecture and design, there came a point in my life when I was in my early 30s that I had to choose one, because I need to be an expert in one area, and I cannot keep on going back and forth, because that is what I did in my late 20s to early 30s. So what happened was, when I graduated and when I had to do my practical training, I saw a little ad in the newspaper. I think it was either the Malay Mail or the Star newspaper, of a vacancy for a freelance writer. So I submitted an application, and they offered me the job, and they were pleased that I have a degree in architecture, because the magazine, which is called Concepts, which is this one, covers design, architecture and lifestyle. So basically I have the knowledge and interest to write for this magazine, and this is my first freelance writing job, and I was asked to cover a new condominium development on Jalan Jelati in Kuala Lumpur, in Ampang. It's got an interesting concept, which is based on Datuk Lat's illustrations of kampung life, as you can see here. Hope you can see. So the condominium development has an orchard, you know, and the way they designed the pool was it was supposed to look like a pond in the kampung. So I managed to interview the landscape architect and his wife and partner. So I was able to combine both my interests in architecture and in journalism. So from that particular experience, I then was able to get a job as senior writer at this magazine called Concepts. Home Concepts, published by a Singaporean company with an office in Malaysia. So this was good fun for me, because I was able to go to a lot of, you know, interesting houses and meet a lot of talk to a lot of designers and architects. And this is a cover that I actually came up with the styling for, with my good friend and photographer Arwah Adam Ariel. He's passed away, but he was one of the best photographers I'd worked with. I had a lot of fun, and I think what I like about being a writer or a journalist is that I get to go out and meet a lot of people. And I also had experience working as copywriter for an advertising agency on Jalan Sultan Ismail, and also worked in various other magazines, including Spa Asia and Spa Arabia, where I was the web editor. So I handled the website, uploaded the copy, and also worked on the newsletters, the e-newsletters. I also had experience working in book publishing. I was working on the Encyclopedia of Malaysia, the Malay Sultanates. So this, I still have the layout, one of the layouts that I did. So this one was on the Long Yunus dynasty in Kelantan. And in book publishing, we had to be very detailed, you know, especially when you're doing an encyclopedia. My last position, a formal position in a news organization, is as managing editor of the Brunei Times. This one. This is a page that I did, page 1, and this is one of my favorite layouts, because it's got His Majesty the Sultan of Brunei there with his rakyat. I really have to have this framed, you know, before it becomes even more yellowed. So I spent 5 years in Brunei and started out as a sub-editor. So sub-editor is someone that edits copy or the reporter's work and make it fit into the space provided by the designer. And of course, the sub-editor also must find the relevant photos that go with the story and also provide catchy headlines. And under the tutelage of we call him Mr. Visa, Sir Visa. He was a veteran journalist who worked a long time at the New Straits Times, and he was my boss when I first worked at the Brunei Times, and he guided me and gave me the opportunity to work at all the desks except the sports desk. So I had experience working at the business desk, working at the home desk, which is for local news, features desk. I did not have experience working for is the sports desk, but that's because I did not want to do sports. I suppose I could, but I just didn't want to do it, you know. And actually, there's another colleague of mine, a former MRSM student also, Julie Suharni. She was the sports editor. She was one of the best sports editors I've worked with. So I just want to say that, you know, there are a lot of amazing former MRSM students out there.
I'm actually a morning person, but working for a newspaper as editor, I had to work nights, so I had to adjust my biological clock. But then when I became managing editor, I had to also go for meetings in the morning, and then sometimes I would do night duty and close the newspaper, which means I sign off on all the pages and do the page one layout. So it's quite intense, and you have this daily deadline, but I think I got used to it, and every day to me is an achievement. Also, I quite liked guiding reporters. One of my duties as managing editor was to come up with a training program for new reporters. I noticed that after a week of intensive training, even the most reserved and shy recruit would become more confident and was able to get a story from complete strangers. I would say that getting a story, especially in a country like Brunei, is not easy. You know, Brunei does not have crazy politics like Malaysia, or natural disasters like the Philippines or Japan, and it has a very low crime rate. So where do you dig for stories? So that means the reporters and the editors have to be very creative, very resourceful. So having talent for writing does not automatically make you a prime candidate for journalism. You need to be tenacious, and you must be willing to go wherever you are sent. And if you have genuine interest for the vocation, that's even better. So do you want to be a journalist?
The wonderful thing about being an MRSM student is the library. I actually spend a lot of time in the library because I like to read. I still do, but I just don't have that much time now. And so every Saturday, if I could, you know, I'd go early to book a table so that I can borrow these international magazines like Time, Newsweek, Asia Week, Life, National Geographic, and also sometimes I also read, of course, Dewan Masyarakat, Dewan Sastra, and you know, other local magazines. But I would always make sure that I do at least an hour of reading on world politics, trends, what's happening in the world. And I suppose my interest in current affairs started during that time because of the exposure and accessibility to this reading material, because you have to remember during that time we don't have smartphones, we don't have the internet, so the only way that you can get information is through reading. and I think, if I'm mistaken, I was tasked to manage the English newsletter, because I remember we were given a small room at the corner on the top floor of the academic building, and it was quite exciting. It felt like I was a real reporter, so apart from that, MRSM also gave me opportunities to build up my confidence through debates. I was a debater. In fact, I still have this plaque, and I think the first place went to Jasim. So all of this exposure helped in actually making me, giving me the skills needed, the preparation needed to become a journalist. And later on, when I was doing A-levels, I was also given the opportunity to manage the first yearbook produced at College Mara Banting, or MRSM Banting. So this is it. So I would say that my interest and inclination towards journalism and writing started quite early, even before I decided to study architecture. I feel that coming from a different background, apart from academic background, I mean apart from journalism or media and communications, I was able to create a niche for myself. So with my knowledge of architecture and design, I was able to I had an advantage over someone who graduated from journalism school. But sometimes you have to write like boring stuff, like building and construction or materials, which I loved, so that works to my advantage. And of course, after that, when I started to freelance, I was able to write for magazines like Haven. This was published by the Age magazine. I also did travel writing, and I suppose if you're able to write, if you can write well, you can write on anything. And I did also write for trade magazines like Food Export International, and I was able to go to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to cover a conference there. And it's nothing to do with architecture, but writing is writing. If you can write on one thing, you can write on another. So that's why I say the basic skill that you need to be a journalist is you need to be able to write.
Recently, I discovered an old scrapbook that I had made when I was probably 11 or 12, where I would paste a newspaper and magazine article clippings, as well as articles on my then crush, Boris Becker. Also a list of new words to expand my vocabulary. And I also discovered that I had actually collected some articles by the late Rahman Rashid. Even back then, when I was still young, I always thought, it would be amazing to have my work published in a newspaper or magazine. And now I wonder what that 11-year-old me would think about the fact that 20 years later she would get her own column, just like Rahman Rashid. It's called Notes from the Klang Valley, and unfortunately the column only lasted a year because there was one time I wrote about Anwar Ibrahim going to jail, and then I got suspended indefinitely. Oh well, that's life.
And I remember when college, not an English college. You know, I suppose maybe I was too active or something like that, I don't know. But this is an interesting thing, because I feel that it's good to have varied interests, and it's good to be multi-skilled and multi-talented, because I was basically never out of a job, you know, unless I chose to take a sabbatical, just to do my own thing or to do research. I was able to work in architecture, I was able to work in journalism and publishing, but and so you have to remember that even though you're good at something, you know, you cannot control market forces. If the world economy is not doing well, you know, like for example in 2020, I'm sure you all know that a lot of companies have had to close down, and a lot of people had gotten retrenched. So if you are multi-skilled, you probably could find some other job apart from the one that you are trained for, you know, and I feel that having been an MRSM student gave me certain characteristics that was developed when I was in MRSM, and that is one, to think out of the box, and also a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, and always having a plan B or C, not just plan A. Sometimes you have to create your own opportunities, you know, and not just expect the, you know, door to open for you. Terima kasih. Thank you very much for sitting through half an hour of this video presentation. Thank you for being very patient, and I hope you have gained some insight into the profession of journalism. And if you are interested, you can always get in touch with me at 01321999594. You can just call or text me, tell me where you're from, MRSM Kota Bharu, or if this is shared with your friends from which MRSM, you know, and if you happen to be in Kelana Jaya, you can always join one of my workshops next year. Why not? Or just drop by for a chat. I'm always happy to meet junior MRSM. All the best.